2 words for you. Zip disk.
I had one of those.
You gonna finish that?
I am going to finish this.
Very well done.
So proud of myself.
It's episode something of Quarantine Dads.
It is. If we follow the actual postings of what we've been doing.
This is a dynamite start.
It is so...
I'm Andy.
I'm Micah.
This is Quarantine Dads.
By now you have either heard of us before, or if this is your first time listening, this is pretty much the average conversation that we have.
Yeah, it's 45 minutes of this. Buckle up, Buttercup.
I was going to say, is it episode... I think it's actually episode 6, because we pulled out and made the Liquor Runs their own episodes.
True. So it's episode 7 in total, but it's episode 6 in the world of labeling, if you're keeping track that way.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, when I put season in, when I posted the Liquor Run, it wouldn't let me do LR as the season. It had to be a numerical value. So it went to season 99. I doubt we'll actually have 99 seasons of this podcast, but if we ever get there, we're going to need to rethink our strategy for the Liquor Runs.
Yeah, we're going to need to retool. Maybe renumber.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so yes, episode 6. And last week we did Mezcal.
We did Mezcal last week, and this week, we'll get into it in a minute, but we're going to do our first Minnesota whiskey this week.
We are.
Which is kind of exciting because we're
Minnesotans.
We're Minnesotans. We're neighbors. We drink together. We chat together. We decided to press record together. See what happened.
Abandon people over the weekend when I need some quiet time to prey on insecurities.
Oh, God. I hate you for that. I hate you for that. You did it intentionally. You knew what you were doing.
We needed some quiet time.
Yeah, we all did.
Absence makes the heart grow fond.
Something like that. I think that was... a couple weeks ago, I don't know if it was the Mezcal week or the week before, because they're all obviously running together. And
it's a blur.
Yeah, I mean, day is day and night is night, and that's about all that's certain anymore. We talked about reaching the breaking point, and I think this past weekend was that step beyond the breaking point, where you realize that you're going to go to a very dark place, and you're going to nowhere productive, and you just need to dial it back. In the words of John Ryan, you need to get back to neutral.
Just kind of have a good reset weekend. Have a good weekend to just kind of reassess, recalibrate, a little self-reflection, some mindfulness.
Put some syrup on your pancakes. Get back to neutral. Then you'll get back up.
And I mean, this past weekend was Mother's Day, too. So it was all about the moms.
It was. I mean, Sunday was a nice day. Did you get your wife anything spectacular? I
ordered her a couple cooking books. I had asked her what she wanted, and she was very typical to who my wife is as a person, of very indecisive, and really didn't ask for much and everything else. So my daughters had some really great ideas that were absolutely useless. Like, hey, she needs another Alexa. And I'm like, no, she doesn't. We have enough of them throughout the house.
Yeah, you do. You do.
As I'm looking over at the end of my desk to make sure she doesn't turn on.
I did the same one. I did the same exact thing. Well, your wife is she is a fantastic, let's call her a...
caregiver?
No, do we want to call her a sous chef or a line cook when you cook? Because I don't mean it, I mean... Everyone in a functioning kitchen is important.
Yeah,
she is a great extension of you cooking, but she's great at baking.
She is a fantastic baker, and yeah, I would actually say sous chef. Yeah, that kind of number 2 in the kitchen. Mm-hmm. That I know if I ask her for something, she's kind of on it, and she does it, and I don't have to think about it. She has no sense of urgency, which is always my typical little pet peeve that I have, but I love her, so that's all that matters.
She also makes sure, generally, more often than not, you don't injure yourself in the kitchen.
You just say more often than not, just because there has been incidents.
Well, of course, there was an incident.
There was an
incident. We don't have to talk about it.
Almost cutting my finger off.
You did, but I was right there to take you to the emergency room.
You were, and I was pretty quick of immediately wrapping it up so nobody saw anything, and then I was like, we're going to the ER right now.
That was like a well-oiled machine.
All of a sudden it was like, oh shit, and then everybody else kind of just was like,
You dropped the knife, reached for it, Knew you shouldn't have done it.
So the knife had slipped. I kind of said it a little precariously, and basically it was sitting on something, and it had rolled and started to slide, and my dog, Cat, was right at my feet. And I decided to try and flick the knife, and right as I flicked the knife, it had actually slid off the edge of the cutting board, and I ran my pointer finger essentially right up the end of the blade,
and you
right to the bone and tendons.
And you do not have dull knives in your kitchen.
No,
so
nice shoe knife that will cut to the bone.
Yeah, you knew you were cut. Your wife saw that you were cut. Immediately handed you, I think, paper towel to wrap around.
No, I grabbed my towel that because I always had my towel over my shoulder, right? So I immediately grabbed my towel over my shoulder and just wrapped it up.
I think I was immediately out your front door to get my car keys, yelling, "I'll meet you in my car."
Yep.
And we were at the hospital about 5 minutes later. So that was good.
It is. So
tonight,
Minnesotan.
Being the Minnesotans we are.
Yeah.
Adair. We got a bottle of whiskey.
Oh, you betcha.
To crack open here.
Yeah.
And to drink. This is J. Carver Hunt Club Double Barrel Rye Whiskey, which is actually a special edition rye from them. J. Carver is one of many, I would say, fast-growing distilleries in Minnesota. The distillery community in the last 10 years has really exploded like it has in a lot of places. It's still developing, though, both in time and, I think, product. J. Carver is the nearest distillery to where we live.
Yeah,
and we've
the
had
actual
a few
distilleries.
Yeah, and we've had a few of their offerings, but we have not had this.
No, we have not. So, pretty excited. Obviously, it's a 80 proof, 40% alcohol, nice private reserve bottle. Pretty cool. I mean, this is more of your traditional style. Mm-hmm. Starting to see this a lot more and more of a barrel style that's almost wine bottle looking.
Right. So I have a problem with this bottle, not through anything that J. Carver did with the bottle, but because they are too tall for one half of my liquor cabinet. Yeah. So once one side fills up, I have nowhere to put bottles like this.
Well, and I have... There you go, moderation in the pours.
Look at that.
It can be taught.
Look at I learned from the liquor run.
Mm-hmm.
I learned from the liquor run.
You've been very cautious ever since
then. You need to be a little more deft. Or I need to be a little more deft with my pours. Yeah.
Good bottle, finished. So the first barrel is your traditional oak. And then after a year, they pull it out and they put it in one of their apple brandy barrels. Because they make an apple brandy. Very Midwestern, right?
Yeah.
As we talk about brandy, we were talking about that earlier.
Well, and I know they pride themselves on being really local in the products they do. And if we drew, from where we live, if we drew a 10-mile radius, there's plenty of farms. J. Carver sits in the middle of plenty of farms in terms of where they're located in Waconia, Minnesota. And then around the area, there are several apple orchards nearby. Yep, so I would imagine I wouldn't be surprised if they partnered with one or several of the orchards.
Right. And within that 10-mile radius is actually the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum that's run by the University of Minnesota, and their agriculture students go there. Fun fact about that is that's where the Honeycrisp apple was actually created and invented.
And it's the best apple, and if you disagree, you can get the hell out.
So that is actually what is considered one of the first super apples. Mm-hmm. And now...
It's a hybrid, right?
It's a hybrid. Yep.
And what are they making now? They just came out with something?
There's 6 or 7 new hybrids that'll be hitting the markets. They hit a little bit last year, but they'll be really big this year. One of them, and I don't know what the names are. If you haven't figured this out by now, I am terrible with names for you on the podcast. I know Andy knows this.
Do you know my name? Who are you?
What?
Yeah.
The cool thing there is a couple of those new ones are basically shelf stable for like a year to a year and a half in the refrigerator.
Mm-hmm. I feel like one that they came out with last year was called like the Golden Pizzazz or something like that.
Well, the Pizzazz was supposed to be one. It doesn't have the crunch that you get with a good Honeycrisp.
Yeah.
And so we have 3 Honeycrisp apple trees in my backyard. They're flowering again this year, so we'll have more Honeycrisp apples than we did last year. I'm really excited for that. I love Honeycrisp, you know that too, and I know you do. And they are year-round. They exist in this house, and
so they do a year of their
oak barrel
of this rye in their oak barrel. They pull it out. They put it in a used apple brandy barrel, and that's what produces this. So cheers.
Yeah. I wonder if the Hunt Club comes to the fact that it's finished in an apple brandy barrel. From like a Beauty and the Beast reference or something like that. I just think of the Hunt Club and I think of apples and
I don't know. It just might be. I don't know if there's a Hunt Club out that way. I think there is.
There is. I mean,
I am not a hunter. Something you know about me.
Yeah, I have hunted. I do not do so as an adult. Yeah, I just there's better things for me to do than take an animal's life. I leave that to the people that.
Fair enough.
People that do that on farms and like to hunt for it. There's nothing wrong with it. I think when it's done properly and everything, it's a pretty cool thing. So
on the nose of this, we were talking
apple
before we recorded. There's definitely apple from that apple barrel. I think you get a little bit of pepper. It's also I'm surprised at how mellow the nose is. It's not a strong nose.
And how mellow the taste of it is across the palate. I get pepper on the palate. Mm-hmm. Kind of that aftertaste has a bit of pepperiness.
Mm-hmm. I think I equate some of that with a little bit of the youth. On the front of the palate, you catch that even for a rye, it tastes a bit young.
But it's nice though that
some of the it's not overly spicy, and I think some of the flavors, particularly that apple barrel, round out that youthfulness by the time it hits mid palate, so that's not what you're left with.
So this just came to mind, and I know we were joking about it because this weekend I finally decided to turn on my Xbox and log some serious hours in on a video game, which was super relaxing, and it was a really good disconnect. And I know my son's birthday is the day after Cinco de Mayo, and so he got some video games that required me to associate his Xbox profile with his EA login, and after fighting with it for probably 6 hours, I finally got them both to work. So I know that you'd had issues previously, and I just wanted to bring up the principal fact that I appreciate your pain. As somebody that works in identity really heavily on the IT side, and
it's why I haven't done anything with it. Yeah. I have been without and it's not like I play a ton, so it's not, and I play one game. I play FIFA. That's all I play. And I've been without my EA account now for 6 months, maybe a year, because for some reason it is not linked, and I cannot figure out how to reset it. And every time I reset it, it's clearly routing to the wrong place, so I've just given up.
But I got my son's fixed, and so I think I can help you with yours. And I made it, and I actually figured out how it works. If you set your email address for your Xbox Live account, and you have your EA account to the exact same email address, it will single sign on you in.
Yeah, so that's what I need to do.
So you need to make sure that you have an EA Sports account with the same email address as your Xbox Live account, and then it should auto-sign you in and auto-log you in.
Fine, I'll do that.
That's how they're linking the identities, the social identities, is via email address.
Fine, I'll do that. I'll figure that out at some point in my life.
Yeah, or you'll just come over, on Wednesday or something like that and be like, help me fix this. You figured out how to make it work.
Yes, exactly. There's a bottle of bourbon at my house that's open if you come over here and help me fix this for a half an hour.
I mean, let's just be completely transparent here. If either one of us is coming over to each other's houses, which it happens all the time, there is always an open bottle of bourbon.
That is true. That is true.
What do you think? So second sip, I still like it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think I was going to like it. I like the apple on the nose.
I think the apple.
It's like a good carameled apple.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's
got vanilla caramely.
Yep,
like it's a caramel apple.
And those are the flavors. Not to beat a dead horse, but those are the flavors for me that make it, as it hits mid palate and back of the palate, make it that it doesn't drink really peppery rye all the way through, and also cuts through some of that youth of the barrel.
Right, that they polished this spirit off in that apple brandy bottle or barrel, excuse me, And it was a very, very smart idea to take something that was a younger rye, and young even from a rye standard, right? And I know we've talked about that before, but polishing that off in that apple brandy gives it a smell on the nose, a smoother finish. It's a cool little polish. I really like it.
I think that's the best part about it, is that, to use your word, polish, especially on the back end, because it's really easy to, as we talked about before, it's really easy to have a rye that just drinks so rye forward all the way through, where it just keeps being rye all the way back, and it's not that.
So, like, no spoiler, because you and I decided what we were going to do from the cocktail standpoint,
right?
But with it being I did not know it was finished in brandy when we were mixing the cocktail, and with the apple notes and the apple brandy kind of polish on it, I'm very excited for the old fashioned. Right, as we talk about a Midwest old fashioned, and we were thinking about that. Like, you go to Wisconsin, brandy's what they use for part of their old fashions. Not necessarily the case throughout the rest of the U.S., but kind of a Midwestern thing. So this polished that taste with it from it being a rye, old fashioned, with that brandy polish on it, should be a pretty tasty cocktail. What do you think?
And I think so. And that's a constant battle between Minnesota and Wisconsin in terms of old fashions. Is their whiskey old fashions typically in Minnesota, but you go to Wisconsin, and if you ask for an old fashioned, you're getting with brandy. And especially if you're I know people, and I don't know about you, but I know people that swear by the old fashioned supper, not old fashioned, no pun intended, but the supper clubs in Wisconsin. Oh. You go into those supper clubs and you order an old fashioned, and you get one of the best drinks that you're going to ever have. And people swear by them when they go camping, when they're traveling through Wisconsin, when they stay a night, whatever it is.
So we go to a supper club in the Wisconsin Dells every single time we go, and I have an old-fashioned there, and I swear that is probably one of my favorite cocktails. Being on vacation always helps, but it's a great steaks, great fish. I mean, pretty much anything you order on the menu is awesome. It's a great supper club. But yeah, I would actually echo that sentiment 100%. If you're in Wisconsin and you have a good supper club, and that's an interesting thing, because it's like the supper clubs are really, that's a Wisconsin thing. And there's not a lot of things I like about Wisconsin, but that would be one of them.
Well, it's an outstate thing. I think Wisconsin has kept them certainly alive. You hear about them more in Wisconsin, or people traveling or going on road trips or whatever it is. But my drive to college was through southeastern Minnesota, and there were a few supper clubs I passed on the way. One in particular called the Branding Iron off of 52 in southeastern Minnesota, and I wanted, I was always alone, but I wanted to stop there so bad at some point to just see what the vibe and the decor and the people were like, because it's in the middle of nowhere. It's in one of those towns that is on, the state highway, but it's a 2-lane state highway by that point, and it's up on a hill, so it's got prime real estate. But there's only 1,000 people in the town, so who in the world goes there? I never stopped.
At least 50 to 100 of those residents a night are regulars in there. And you know what? Those are the best kind of places to go into and have food. I mean, I travel a ton. My favorite thing is, get me away from a chain restaurant. I want to go where the locals go, day in, day out. What's
your favorite place that you've traveled when it comes to being able to have those local spots? Because I know you travel back to some of the same places, so you've developed some spots that you like depending on where you go.
So Husk we've talked about, and I love that place.
And that's Nashville.
I was super pissed. So just a tangent on that question, but it's relevant to that question. Every single place that I've registered to, and a lot of the local spots, you can't book on OpenTable, or you can't book on an online thing unless you go directly to their website and you sign up and you register. All of them have started doing takeout. And the joke I made to my wife last night was, this is really effing disappointing, because all I want to do is go to Austin and have a taco at one of my favorite taquerias, and I can't do that right now. But at least they order carryout. And thanks for reminding me via email that I'm not traveling. I really appreciate
Oh,
this.
so you got an email from
Oh,
them?
yeah, I've been getting emails, like 2 or 3 of them a week from these places of like, by the way, we have takeout and we're ready to go and handle your orders.
And it's
because
in Texas.
And it's in Texas, or it's in Kentucky, it's in, just all over Ohio, just all over.
Is traveling what... I've been meaning to ask you this. Is traveling what developed your interest in bourbon and whiskey?
I think it definitely refined it. I can remember one of my first business kind of conventions and going, and it was actually in Austin, Texas, of all places, coming back to that, which is a beautiful city. A lot of people have a lot of different opinions of Texas and everything else like that, and Austin is definitely different from the rest of the state.
Certainly.
But there's still amazing places in Houston and Dallas and all these other places to go eat, and they're more metropolitan. Austin's a little weird, and I think that's one of their slogans is keep it weird, Austin. But we were down there, and actually just coming full circle to the old fashions we were doing tonight is I had ordered a old fashioned, and I really liked a Scotch old fashioned, which is a little weird, just because I was drinking a lot more Scotch. I had gotten into the peatier Scotches, the Lagavulins, the Lafrogs. I really liked actually Cutty Sark. Mm-hmm. Cutty Sark old fashions were kind of my go-to at the time, and I just remember sitting down, and I'll keep his name out of it, but he was kind of a mentor, one of the old guard on the team at the time, and he left and moved to a different team about 6 months after I started. But I sat down next to him, and I'd been working with him a little bit, and we kind of gotten to know each other, and I ordered that, and he goes, stops me dead cold, stops the bartender cold, because he's not having that, he's having what I'm having. And I'm like, alright. And that's how I learned to do an old-fashioned with a rye or bourbon, have a good bourbon old-fashioned. Mm-hmm. And my favorite thing, he goes, so this is how you order it. You can put the cherry in, but you keep the rest of the fruit shit out. I don't want a fruity one, I don't want a sugary one, I want a dry old-fashioned. And still to this day, I'm like, I'll take an old-fashioned bourbon, keep the fruit out. I don't need the fruit with sugar. And so you're like, so bourbon with a cherry and bitters and bourbon? And you're like, yeah, pretty much. Just put it in there. And I know that a lot of people...
Just a Manhattan, hold the vermouth?
Yeah, basically. If I want to doll it up, just put the vermouth in. But yeah, I know that was... Bourbon was kind of on the uptick. It helps a lot in the 4+ years that I've been in this current job, that I've always covered Kentucky, and I've always had to go out there a couple times a year.
Because you've done a little bit of the bourbon trail, right?
Yeah, I've done about half of the bourbon trail. I can never seem to... It's during work, right? So you're there on a business trip, and it's one of those... A lot of them close by...
I choose business ethics.
Yes, business ethics. It definitely is one of those that a lot of them close by 5 or 6. They're not open late from the tours and everything, so you can normally not get into any of them. I remember going out there a couple years ago when we were in Tennessee, and we had to go from Nashville to Knoxville, which is a decent drive across the state. And I had looked, and I was like, it's only an hour detour. And we had gotten done with our meeting, and we ended up walking in and catching the last tour for Jack Daniels, just because we were driving. And that was a beautiful drive, because it actually took us down through, and we actually went into the top side of Georgia to go over into Knoxville. But all those hills and everything else, and you drive past some towns, and you see these huge bluffs and kind of ridges on either side, and you're like, you're looking at the sky, you're like, do they ever actually see sunlight? Or is that like a town permanently in the dark? But it was cool. But yeah, I'm really kind of jonesing for some of these restaurants and everything like that keep sending me things of I love this, I love that, and a good taqueria is amazing. A good Mexican restaurant in general is awesome. Yeah, there's little places in every city, but it's not the tourist traps.
Right.
It's not, and there are some of them that are kind of tourist traps just for a reason, but it's worth it.
I mean, like Husk, for example. I mean, people know about Husk, right?
But most of the reservations are booked up pretty well in advance.
Right, but that's my point. It's not like it's some hole-in-the-wall local establishment that you have to know is there. That doesn't mean that you wouldn't take the time to go if you really like it, because it's damn worth it.
Absolutely. And, I've told you that, too. Like, I try and get... A great example is... St. Elmo's.
I now want the shrimp and grits from Husk. Like, I want it on the table right now. Yeah. I want it right this second.
Speaking of shrimp, that's where I was going with Indianapolis. It's called Harry and Izzy's, and it's the sister company to St. Elmo's. St. Elmo's, if you don't know, a lot of people don't consistently rate it as like number 3 from a top steakhouse across the U.S.
Right.
What they're famous for is a couple of things. Obviously, fantastic steaks.
Their fire.
It is not their fire. It is, their cocktail sauce is fire.
Rob Lowe would be disappointed. Was Rob Lowe in St. Elmo's fire?
I don't know.
I don't either.
Yeah.
I'd Google it, but that sounds like a lot of work and would detract from whatever you're talking about. So go on.
Go on. The cool thing with that, they're famous, St. Elmo's as well as Harry and Izzy's, and they're actually connected to each other. Are famous for their shrimp cocktail because they grate their horseradish to order. And so the sooner you grate horseradish, the spicier it is. It actually loses its spiciness as it sits. So it is like the spiciest cocktail sauce you'll ever have.
Sounds amazing.
I have it a minimum of 3 times, and that includes if I'm on an overnight trip, because they have a Harry and Izzy's in the airport. Meaning I will land, immediately beeline for Harry and Izzy's, and I put it into my itinerary that I will have a shrimp cocktail before I leave the airport. We will eat at St. Elmo's or Harry and Izzy's at least one of the night. If I'm doing an overnight, that's where we're eating. And then on the way out, I will stop and make sure that I get a St. Elmo's or a Harry and Izzy shrimp cocktail. And it has been a couple of times where I was like, can I get that to go? And I ate it on the airplane.
Oh, God. You're the guy who takes a
shrimp cocktail on an
airplane.
I travel enough that I'm normally first class on that flight, so it's fine.
Oh, God. You are terrible. Shrimp cocktail on an airplane? Have you ever gotten dirty looks when you've done that?
No, because it's normally gone before, they board Delta Comfort
Plus
or
so
anything
you
else.
Jump on.
And I just whoop it down quick. My feet, I'm crying. The horseradish. I call it a palate cleaver. You know when you have horseradish hit the palate, and it's just like, oh man, that clears out your sinuses. The shrimp cocktail at Harry and Izzy's is like the cleaver. It's like they took just right at your top teeth and cleave it straight back, and you feel it in the back of your neck with how spicy it is. But it's so good.
It's like I have a picture of you eating that and getting the look in the back of your eyes like everyone gets when they do the bomb on Hot Ones.
Just because you've seen me do the bomb on
I wasn't going to drag you into that. I was just going to say that look, that's a show that I didn't know existed until we started hanging out, and you watched it, and it's Sean Evans, who's a phenomenal interviewer, frankly. Yeah. And
I'm going to do a little bit more.
Go for it. You do you. You be your own boss.
Be your own boss.
In 10 easy steps. Because they give you the tools to succeed.
This is an enterprise round.
All right, fine.
That's a Step Brothers reference, by the way, and I got that one.
Yeah, you did, finally. Good God. I was telling someone today, I got out for my first 9 at the end of the workday today and played a terrible 9 holes of golf, but it was a gorgeous day. And we were talking about recording, and they said it's really interesting because we've developed all these... We've developed a close friendship, and we have similar interests or similar... Like we've talked about before, both of us really are interested in music. Now, what we listen to is a bit different, so we've kind of found areas of crossover and areas of expansion. And one of the things I was saying is we don't have the 20 years of watching the same movies together over and over again like I do with the person I golfed with today, who's been a friend since middle school. Yeah, so absolutely. It's like, sometimes I feel like, man, you don't know me at all, Micah. Gosh! You're supposed to know every reference I have.
To every movie. You did commit to watching one of my favorite movies in the upcoming weeks, which is Biodome.
Well,
the refresher.
No, okay. Pauly Shore went through a span, I don't know, were we early teens? Mid-teens?
Mid-teens.
I mean, it was like mid to late 90s. I don't think it was super early 90s.
No.
Where he did Son-in-Law, and Tiffany Amber Thiessen was in Son-in-Law, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Thank God for Tiffany Amber Thiessen. That's all I have to say about that. But he did Son-in-Law, he did Biodome, he did Jury Duty.
Encino Man.
Encino Man. I forgot about Encino Man. I watched Encino Man a lot.
In the Army Now.
In the Army Now was on the back end, I think, of all of those.
So he had a really cool interview with Joe Rogan about what happened in that era, really was around, and what was kind of the nails in his coffin. And he actually said Son-in-Law, In the Army Now, and those late movies weren't getting the box office creds and the people in the seats in the chairs like the original ones. Kind of like they got Pauly Shore out. And then it was kind of we're just kind of done with Pauly Shore movies. Like, your time has run its course.
I felt like Son-in-Law was the height of him. Because
it was the height of him, and they gave him a lot of money, but it was on the tail end, so it was past the curve.
That's what I'm saying. It's like that was the... I feel like Son-in-Law was the most commercial of them.
Because they threw a ton of money at him to make it successful, and that was the start of the flop and the kind of the slide down.
I mean, in any movie that cast Kelly Kapowski to be in it in the 90s had my attention. If I didn't already make that clear.
Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
Good. I made that clear?
Yes.
Yeah. Kelly Kapowski.
Right.
Big fan of Kelly Kapowski.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we were talking about...
Also a big fan of Topanga as a teenager.
We had a total... that had to have been an hour and a half, 2 hours. Not this past weekend, but the weekend before, where we were sitting there and... it was Cinco de Mayo. Where we actually had TRL, and we went through a TRL playlist of like all the number ones and started playing through. Absolutely. It was pretty awesome.
We'll circle back to Total Request Live at some point.
Absolutely.
But what the hell were we talking about? Pauly Shore. What was before that? Kelly Kapowski was in there twice. Shrimp cocktails. You poured yourself more whiskey, which actually is surprising to me.
Yeah, it's I like it actually a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an easy sipper.
Mm-hmm.
Especially at 80 proof. It reminds me of the...
It's not spicy. That's really, really interesting to me for it being a rye. And I think it's that polish of that apple brandy barrel that's really cutting through the edginess, the age, and everything else. So.
Should we rate it? Since we circle back to talk about it before we forget about it?
We can, yeah. This is a spread around the time of rating it and everything else before we do the cocktail. And...
So, J. Carver Hunt Club Double Barrel Rye Whiskey, aged a year, then finished off after it's pulled out in their used apple brandy barrels. I'll let you go first.
7.
I'm nodding. I'm thinking. I was in the 7.2, 7.3 category, but I was feeling a little bit generous.
I didn't want to say
with
the 7.2 because I feel like we put a lot of things at that 7.2 mark, and this isn't really hitting that 7.2. I'd say a flat 7.
I can go with the flat 7, and that's not to me. That's not a bad number by any means. And I would be interested if they, for example, because most of the distilleries in Minnesota are the last 10-ish years.
Oh yeah, they're all young.
I think when we...
Outside of, Phillips?
Phillips has been around for years.
Right.
And they make a lot of different things, so they own a lot of different labels that don't bottle under the Phillips name, right? I think Douglas and Todd is a Phillips company. I'm almost positive of that. I'm trying to think I'm trying to think of one other, but Douglas and Todd certainly is. And I've heard decent things about their bourbon in the last 6 months.
Interesting.
Where I was going with that is I would be really interested to see the same finishing process on a rye from them that was aged 3 or 4 years.
I mean, that's getting pretty old from a rye standpoint.
Even 2 to 3. I mean, since this is a year, I'd be interested to see the difference. And that's where I think would elevate it. Because for me, it had nice flavor. It had nice finish. It was, I agree with you, that surprisingly mellow for a rye, but it also was relying to me on a lot of that apple brandy barrel finish to mask some of the other things that were probably, if you just drank it as as the rye when they pulled that out.
Absolutely.
And I'm not saying that as a criticism per se, but that just, to me, it doesn't have a ton of depth beyond that apple brandy finish.
No, I mean, you get pepper notes, you get a polished drink, and it's definitely a sipper. Like, that's a good bottle to have around the house and just be like, I'm just going to sip on some stuff. Right. Or make an old-fashioned.
Make an old-fashioned, I could see that especially in the fall and the winter around here, putting a healthy...
Hot toddy.
Either that or just a healthy dose in like 8 ounces of hot cider.
Yeah, so malt cider.
Yeah, because it's only 80 proof, so it's not like some of the other...
Well, when we get done with the Whittle Jane... Applewood. That's apples on apples on apples.
Yeah.
This would be that fallback.
Yeah, I mean, this reminds me a lot of that. Like a slightly less developed version of that.
Yeah. I mean, it's just carameled apple.
Yeah.
Right? It's got caramel vanilla notes, as you would expect in it. It's not spicy.
No.
Which, when you hear a rye...
It's more sweet than it is spicy.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think 7's a fair score. And I'd be curious to see what future... releases, because it is a limited release. I'd be curious to see the same type of thing in a future release that has just a touch more age on it. Mm-hmm. Just see if it develops any of that whiskey profile with that finish.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. It'll come in a little bit more. I actually, if they're going to continue to pull it out at that year, you're probably not going to see a variance there.
Right.
They'd have to barrel age it for longer. Right?
Yeah, and that's my point. Is I'd be curious. And that was the point I was making about the age of a lot of Minnesota distilleries, like we've talked about before.
How do you get started?
What do you do? Your age spirit. They do. J. Carver actually does a very, very well regarded barrel aged gin.
Right, because it doesn't take a long time to, and we've sampled that, and we've had it, and I've actually come back a few times and said, I bet you that gin would be fantastic as a Manhattan.
Yeah,
like a gin Manhattan with J. Carver barrel-aged gin. Great flavor profile. You get the wood, you get the oak, you get the depth that's there, but then you get kind of the lightness and the fruitiness that you can tend to have, and you normally do have on a gin side.
Sounds like something we'd probably do this summer.
Oh, yeah. I got your wife hooked on gin and tonics last summer.
Yeah. So next step is barrel-aged gin. She was talking the other day about... She looked at me and said, What do you have in the house that I would like in a whiskey sour? And I looked at her.
That's a supper club drink, too.
So, yeah. And I looked at her, and first I said, so are you making it with or without an egg white?
And that came up tonight. I was sitting there and I was like, we could do whiskey sours.
Yeah, we would need to probably do a little more pre-production planning to do a whiskey sour.
Why? Because I got a milk...
I don't know.
I have a couple egg yolks. And egg whites, sorry. Not egg yolks.
But that's where, thank God for the liquor run. Because I told her, I said, completely inoffensive, won't knock you on your ass. The bottle of Basil Hayden's is in my liquor cabinet. Make your whiskey sours with that, because I don't know that I'll be drinking it anytime soon. And when you're done with that, I have an unopened bottle of Makers that we bought mistakenly for the liquor run that you can open and use.
We bought it mistakenly. I got a text from somebody, second-guessed myself, and then we bought a replacement bottle. And then when we went to look up Beam Centauri, it was like oh fuck, I was right.
Yeah. So
on that note, supper clubs, Minnesotan, rye.
Yeah.
We're having old
How much am I putting in here? I'm just gonna sink the cherry.
You could sink the cherry, because we gotta do ice, but I want a little more. More. Oh my god. I learned how to pour a Minnesota. That's good.
Yeah. If it doesn't have cherry, if your mother isn't staying with cherries, find somebody else to make you an old fashioned.
Yeah. So, really traditional. We are not doing it here, but I do enjoy it on occasion. Take the last gummy bear. Do it. It's yours, because that's lemon, it's not pineapple.
All of the gummy bears are my gummy bears.
All our bases are belong to us.
No milk will ever be our milk.
The old-fashioned supper club drink, I really, really like this drink. It's been a long time since I've had an old-fashioned, though, so cheers to this.
Thank you, sir.
Cheers to Mother's Day and a good week. We didn't hang out a lot this weekend, but we kind of quarantined ourselves in our houses to relax and catch up. And
don't worry, I was in my head about friendship over. I had done something to offend you. I'm just at that stage of quarantine where I'm second guessing myself on everything.
Well, you didn't invite me to go golfing, and I asked you to go to the driving range. So clearly, bridge is up, Andy.
When you have filing deadlines on Fridays, that's never a good thing in my business because it robs you of sneaking out early to hit the range, to golf. It robs you in the summer of any sort of weather activities. I should have known better, but it is what it is. Business first.
That is a good old-fashioned.
I enjoy it.
Yeah, that's a good old-fashioned.
I do enjoy it.
Yep.
It is,
J. Carver Hunt Club makes a great old-fashioned.
Yeah, so check them out.
Oh, I was gonna say something a little earlier, and then we got sidetracked. It's Pauly Shore.
Yeah.
Encino Man.
Right.
Brendan Fraser.
Right.
Such an underrated movie.
Man, Brendan Fraser, remember when he was like the hottest actor for about a film and a half?
The Mummy being the peak of his career.
Yeah, The Mummy, and then
Miss Congeniality.
No, it wasn't Miss Congeniality. He was in a movie with Elizabeth Hurley where she was the
that was what
devil.
I was thinking. Yes, and he had The Wishes.
Yeah, what movie was that?
That was the movie I was thinking of. It wasn't Miss Congeniality. It was that one, and that was a great movie. Elizabeth Hurley.
Yeah, for about 2 years.
Really?
I feel
she looks good now.
Yeah, well,
he was one of the actors that actually came out of, if I remember correctly, about a lot of the internal politics stuff and kind of in that Me Too movements era of around just a lot of really weird stuff. So like. He was one of the males that came out during it, right around the same time as Terry Crews did.
Okay.
And that was kind of one of the end of, like, George of the Jungle. Yeah, that, like,
he was
2000. Yep.
Yeah,
he's made a comeback now, though. Mm-hmm. He's getting back into a lot more movies, and he's actually really good.
Yeah, so. Encino Man will forever be the height of his career, though.
I like the Mummy series. I mean, you can't overlook the Mummy series. It was really good. I personally think that Tom Cruise destroyed it in The Mummy because they tried to do the reboot, and that was what that was kind of based on.
I don't.
He's from Indianapolis. Full circle of Indianapolis comments.
There you go. So he probably knows St. Elmo's.
He does. He must be very familiar with St. Elmo's. Which, if you get to Indianapolis, book it, and you know you're going to Indianapolis, book it at least a week plus out. I mean, currently right now, I don't even know if they're open.
There you go. Visit Indianapolis. You can send a check to Micah. Just the tourism board.
Their downtown area is actually really cool. Right,
I've heard good things about Indianapolis.
It's really, really, really cool.
Speaking of good things, when we can go back outside, I'm actually really looking forward to jumping over to J. Carver and a couple of the other distilleries that we've had recently in Minneapolis and in Northeast Minneapolis in particular, and kind of getting out and visiting some of them more on site instead of just finding their bottles around town, which is something I know you and I are going to take advantage of.
Absolutely. It was Bedazzled. That was the movie.
There you go. Bedazzled is the movie. On that note, I think we're done.
You know, I think we are. I think we've got our cocktails.
I think we're done. We have our old fashions. Ours are proper Minnesota old fashions with whiskey. You Wisconsinites, you can have...
We pay homage to Wisconsin in an apple brandy finished.
Yeah, I mean, you can have your whiskey. Brandy, but you still have a part of the state attached to you that you haven't taken from Michigan.
Oh, God, do you remember Monkey Bone?
The movie?
Yeah.
Isn't there a...
That's a Ben Stiller movie, too, where he gets, like, the monkey hand, and then, like, each one, like, the finger.
I have no idea, but Jerry Stiller passed away today. Kind of a sad day, depending on what brand of comedy you're interested in.
Roy passed away from Siegfried and Roy this past week.
Yeah, I saw that. My wife is a big Seinfeld fan, a show that I'm not nearly as into her as she was, but I told her that earlier today, and she got noticeably sad. So
Seinfeld's new stand-up came out this past Friday on Netflix, and I was not impressed. I was actually a little disappointed.
Well, I'll watch it, and we'll talk about that next week. How about that?
That sounds good.
But for now, we're going to drink our old fashions. So check us out on Instagram and Twitter at Dad's Quarantine. You can find us online at quarantineddads.com. Episode links, reviews to everything. We have a review
For the ones we ride.
Yeah, we will have a review up for the Hunt Club Double Barrel Rye Whiskey that we had this evening. And you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, anywhere you get your podcasts. And leave us a rating if you like us. We'd like to know people are listening. And other than that, Mike, any last words?
As always, there's no chupacabra tonight. But there are definitely bears outside. So, as always, don't go outside. There are bears out there. And
cheers.
Cheers. 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 And
cheers.
And
cheers.
Cheers. And